So with the worst team in the NFC East last season, you do have the 4-11-1 Philadelphia Eagles. They obviously did miss the playoffs last season, having the worst record in the division, and they also cut ties with Carson Wentz, a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. But they did move up to the 10th spot, right, guys? Yeah, so they traded with the Dallas Cowboys. They moved up 2 spots in the draft. So, Tori, I want to give it to you first. Who was their best pickup in this year's draft?
Hands down, Devonta Smith. It can't be anybody else besides Devonta Smith. That wide receiving core is so decimated by injuries, has been so rattled and so torn apart. They had to go receiver. Like literally, there was no other pick. You just took whatever receiver fell to you when your pick came. And they're again, and they traded up with the Giants. So they went up and they made sure for sure that they got their guy. So I can't fault them for that at all. Hands down, Devonta Smith.
And I think he would have fell to them in the 12th spot, but you never know. Like we see a bunch of smoke and mirrors and stuff happening. But Wyatt, who was your best pick for the Philadelphia Eagles?
No, I agree 100% because if they would have stayed at 12, the Giants would have taken him right there. Without a doubt, I can promise you that right now. That was the lowest. That 10 or 11 was the lowest that Devonta Smith was going to go. There was no lower than that he was going to go. And the Giants are sitting there with their mouths watering. They got their hands open, and then all of a sudden they're caught with their pants down. The Eagles come swooping in. Get the reference there, swoop. Come swooping in and make a great pick, in my opinion. I think it like Tori said, there's nowhere else you can go with this. I mean, it was the best pick the Eagles had by far, and it's not even close. And I think it's a top 5 pick of the first round. I think it was a great pick for them. Like you said, the receiving core, horrible. I mean, they need help everywhere and anywhere they can get it. Greg Ward showed some signs of being okay this year. You had like Travis Fulgham was okay this year, but nobody really stood out as, anything crazy. Even the rookie they got last year, Jalen Reagor, he was still riddled with injuries last year. Couldn't really do anything, and I still think he's a good wide receiver. But I think it's a great pick. It adds to the wide receiver core that they needed. And I think that they had a really good, and this is kind of my honorable mention in a way. If they didn't go with Devonta Smith, I wanted to mention Landon Dickerson also as well was a good pick that they had in the second round.
I was kind of torn on both of those picks because I was like, God, Landon Dickerson was a really good pick in the second round too. So, but wide receivers, their biggest need. They were a walking mash unit.
And I think that they solved a lot of offensive line stuff as well throughout this draft.
Yeah, and just to add to Drew's point here, Hurts and Smith did play together in college at Alabama. I believe they won a national championship together as well. There were a total of 5 college and receivers that play together that are now on the same team in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. So if you guys would correct me if I'm wrong on that. But Wyatt, we always talk about the best, and we always got to talk about the worst. And the Philadelphia Eagles are riddled with worst picks and worst records in the NFC. So with that being said, who is their worst draft pick?
Yeah, I think that their worst draft pick was Milton Williams, defensive end out of Louisiana Tech. I wasn't really very, excited with this guy's tape. Wasn't really excited with where he went, what he did. He was an alright defensive end in college. He was a solid, okay pick for them. I still think there was a lot of better picks that they made. This is really the only pick that I kind of didn't understand for them because they've already got Ingram. They've already got a solid enough defensive line. I think they've got plenty of other issues they needed to go after with that early of a pick to go after him. Wasn't really impressed with it. So if I had to pick a bad pick, I think that's really the only one. Except for the second time they went defensive end in this draft too.
And letting go to Carson Wentz, that was a horrible pick, but we'll address that later. Tori, worst pick of the Philadelphia Eagles.
I went with Marlon Tupeluto. The guy's a defensive lineman, stronger than an ox, but doesn't do anything. He's not great at rushing the passer. He is not great at stuffing the run. He's just really good at holding up a block, and that's about it. He doesn't have very good lateral movement. He's a straight line guy, and if you're going to be a straight line defensive lineman with all that strength, you better be able to rush the passer, and he can't do that. So I really struggled to see what his fit on that defensive line is going to be, unless they think for whatever reason they can teach him another direction than straight ahead.
Yeah, and the Eagles also drafted 2 defense tackles and 2 defensive ends in this year's draft. So that kind of was a head scratcher to me. But I'm not the one making the judgments here. You guys are. Tori, what did you grade the Philadelphia Eagles?
Overall, I gave them a B, just because they addressed a ton of their needs. The big one, obviously, being wide receiver. They needed to find somebody to be that number one target, and we talked about this a little bit on draft night. And I do believe it was Drew that brought that up. Is you're starting to see a lot of these quarterback wide receiver combos in the NFL that were combos in the college game as well.
Right.
So Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts played together, a couple years ago. It very well could be. It could be one of those things. It could be that security blanket. It could be that they already have chemistry. So I really liked their draft. Outside of the Marlon Tupeluto, and it took me about 3 hours to figure out how to say his name. So I'm going to say it as many times as I can. I gave him a B.
Yeah, you guys keep raving about the Devontae Smith, but guys, he's only 6 foot tall, 160 pounds. He's not going to last very, very long in the NFL, especially with the Eagles, because the Tua is not a very
Tell
good
that to Deshaun Jackson.
quarterback.
No, tell that to Deshaun Jackson. Tell that to T.Y. Hilton.
I'm just saying.
Tell that to Tyreek Hill, your own guy.
Tyreek Hill is not a very good receiver without Patrick Mahomes. But rolling with my Mahomie.
Weapon is a weapon.
With that being said, Wyatt, man, I'm going to get so drunk tonight. Draft grade.
I give him a B as well. I agree with Tori. I think they addressed a lot of needs, and I think that Devonta Smith falling to them was huge for them, as well as Landon Dickerson with that second pick. Landon was a guy that could possibly go in the first round. I think that he was a decent pick. There at the second round, I think that it was really cool for them to be able to get him whenever a lot of teams liked him in that first round, but somehow he fell. So B.
All right, so you guys got both Bs for the